There's another group, though, that actively resists gender equality, that sees gender equality as something that is detrimental to men. I was on a TV talk show opposite 4 white men. This is the beginning of the book I wrote, Angry White Men. These were 4 angry white men who believed that they, white men in America, were the victims of reverse discrimination in the workplace. And they all told stories about how they were qualified for jobs, qualified for promotions. They didn't get them. They were really angry. And the reason I'm telling you this is I want you to hear the title of this particular show. It was a quote from one of the men. And the quote was, "A black woman stole my job." And they all told their stories, qualified for jobs, qualified for promotions, didn't get it, really angry. And then it was my turn to speak. And I said, I have just one question for you guys. And it's about the title of the show. A black woman stole my job. Actually, it's about one word in the title. I want to know about the word my. Where did you get the idea it was your job? Why isn't the title of the show A Black Woman Got the Job or A Black Woman Got a Job? Because without confronting men's sense of entitlement, I don't think we'll ever understand why so many men resist gender equality. Look, we think this is a level playing field. So any policy that tilts it even a little bit, we think, oh my God, water's rushing uphill. It's reverse discrimination against us. So let me be very clear. White men in Europe and the United States are the beneficiaries of the single greatest affirmative action program in the history of the world. It is called the history of the world. So, now I've established some of the obstacles to engaging men, but why should we support gender equality? Of course, it's fair, it's right, and it's just. But more than that, gender equality is also in our interest as men. If you listen to what men say about what they want in their lives, gender equality is actually a way for us to get the lives we want to live. Gender equality is good for countries. It turns out, according to most studies, it turns out that those countries that are the most gender equal are also the countries that score highest on the happiness scale. And that's not just because they're all in Europe. Even within Europe, those countries that are more gender equal also have the highest levels of happiness. It is also good for companies. Research by Catalyst and others has shown conclusively that the more gender equal companies are, the better it is for workers, the happier their labor force is. They have lower job turnover. They have lower levels of attrition. They have an easier time recruiting. They have higher rates of retention, higher job satisfaction, higher rates of productivity. So the question that I'm often asked in companies is, boy, this gender equality thing, that's really going to be expensive, huh? And I say, oh no. In fact, what you have to start calculating is how much gender inequality is already costing you. It is extremely expensive. So it is good for business. And the other thing is, it's good for men. It is good for the kind of lives we want to live. Because young men, especially, have changed enormously. And they want to have lives that are animated by terrific relationships with their children. They expect their partners, their spouses, their wives to work outside the home and be just as committed to their careers as they are. I was give you an illustration of this change. Some of you may remember this. When I was a lot younger, I remember there was a riddle that was posed to us. And some of you may wince to remember this riddle. This riddle went something like this. A man and his son are driving on the freeway, and they're in a terrible accident, and the father is killed. And the son is brought to the hospital emergency room. And as they're bringing the son into the hospital emergency room, the emergency room attending physician sees the boy and says, oh, I can't treat him. That's my son. How is this possible? We were flummoxed by this. We could not figure this out. Well, I decided to do a little experiment with my 16-year-old son. He had a bunch of his friends hanging out at the house watching a game on TV recently. So I decided I would pose this riddle to them just to gauge the level of change. Well, 16-year-old boys, they immediately turned to me that it's his mom, right? No problem, just like that. Except for my son, who said, well, he could have two dads. That's an indicator of how things have changed. Younger men today expect to be able to balance work and family. They want dual career couples. They want to be able to balance work and family with their partners. They want to be involved fathers. Now, it turns out that the more egalitarian our relationships, the happier both partners are. Data from psychologists and sociologists are quite persuasive here. I think we have the persuasive numbers, the data, to prove to men that gender equality is not a zero-sum game, but a win-win. Here's what the data show. Now, when men begin the process of engaging with balancing work and family, we often have two phrases that we use to describe what we do. We pitch in and we help out. And I'm going to propose something a little bit more radical. One word: share. Because here's what the data show. When men share housework and childcare, their children do better in school. Their children have lower rates of absenteeism, higher rates of achievement. They are less likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. They are less likely to see a child psychiatrist. They are less likely to be put on medication. So when men share housework and childcare, their children are happier and healthier. And men want this. When men share housework and childcare, their wives are happier. Well, duh. Not only that, their wives are healthier. Their wives are less likely to see a therapist, less likely to be diagnosed with depression, less likely to be put on medication, more likely to go to the gym. Report higher levels of marital satisfaction. So when men share housework and childcare, their wives are happier and healthier. And men certainly want this as well. When men share housework and childcare, the men are healthier. They smoke less, drink less, take recreational drugs less often. They are less likely to go to the ER, but more likely to go to a doctor for routine screenings. They are less likely to see a therapist, less likely to be diagnosed with depression, less likely to be taking prescription medication. So when men share housework and childcare, the men are happier and healthier. And who wouldn't want that? And finally, when men share housework and childcare, they have more sex. Now, of these four fascinating findings, which one do you think Men's Health magazine put on its cover? Housework makes her horny. Not when she does it. Now, I will say, just to remind the men in the audience, these data were collected over a really long period of time, so I don't want listeners to say, okay, I think I'll do the dishes tonight. These data were collected over a really long period of time. But I think it shows something important. That when Men's Health magazine put it on their cover, they also called it, you'll love this, shore play. So, what we found is something really important, that gender equality is in the interest of countries, of companies, and of men, and their children, and their partners. That gender equality is not a zero-sum game, it's not a win-lose, it is a win-win for everyone. And what we